Star Wars The Last Jedi has been the most discussed topic on the internet in the 1 year it has been released. Countless articles and videos have been made by fans that either loved it or outright hated it. The most memorable videos on YouTube were the rants made by YouTubers such as the Dishonored Wolf or Mauler that made us laugh a lot but also understand why we don't like the 8th entry in the Star Wars saga.
What the fuck?
So far, The Last Jedi is the most polarizing movie since The Phantom Menace and has such an effect over the fan base. As a matter of fact, fans are more divided than the time they were bitching about the prequels and the original trilogy. Well, I guess the prequels don't look so bad now, do they?
Hello there.
So you must be thinking, oh great, another smartass on YouTube is going to rant or review The Last Jedi and say that Rey is a Mary Sue and make a stupid joke about Leia's spacewalking scene.
Why even bother?
And bitch about Luke's character inconsistency for the trillionth time, and so on. I'm not here to review The Last Jedi in this video, nor will I snap at Kathleen Kennedy or Rian Johnson either.
Great, that cut it.
I'm going to come forth with arguments of my own and from a different angle. My approach is to analyze the literature behind The Last Jedi and compare it to other works of art in order to explain why so many fans, myself included, disagree with it. The Last Jedi is the second part of a three-part story, and if there's anything that all trilogies before have shown, is that you have to follow some fundamental rules if you want your story to make sense and be considered as good. This particular movie claims to subvert expectations, which is not a bad thing, but tampering with story elements and characters that have been established for years is a whole different story. The most popular trilogies, such as The Lord of the Rings and the original trilogy of Star Wars, and others follow some fundamental rules that have become a recipe for success. To say that Rian Johnson had to think of an original story from scratch might give him leeway as to why he failed. But he's no George Lucas. And this is Star Wars that we're talking about, so the recipe to a successful story is right there. It's been done before. Star Wars belongs to a classic archetype of a good versus evil story that has been around for generations and has been told since ancient times. The most iconic of these good versus evil stories are undoubtedly from ancient Greek mythology, with narratives so rich and useful in real life that explain why they have stood the test of time. Eastern cultures and other parts of the world have similar stories that have been told from ancient times as well. So George Lucas used his genius to abstract key elements from those stories, and with his resourcefulness and patience, he breathed life into Star Wars that we all know and love today. When The Last Jedi was about to be released into theaters, people were complaining that Rian Johnson is going to copy The Empire Strikes Back and rehash a similar story, just like what J.J. Abrams did with The Force Awakens. I think it's safe to say that it didn't even come close to Empire. I don't think anything ever will. It would have been better to see a soft reboot of Empire compared to what we got now. That's why fans didn't have such a problem with The Force Awakens, because subconsciously it's something that we've all seen before. Like Fry said in one Futurama episode, people want to see the same thing over and over again. Futurama fans will get the reference. So without further ado, let us discuss why The Last Jedi's literature failed to hold up. So let's start by getting some very important things out of the way. The original trilogy was pure literature gold, combined with great visual effects that enhanced the picture and the storytelling. The prequels focused more on the spectacle side of things while still having a decent story and characters we can relate to. The sequel trilogy, however, may be the best in visuals out of the three trilogies, but its story is lacking and characters feel forced, sterile, and stale. From sequel supporters, this is the most basic argument I hear every time. The sequel trilogy is far better than the original trilogy because their visuals are shitty and old. No! A movie isn't good because the music and the cinematography are great if the story is lazy and slow in pace. By that token, Shakespeare would never hold up in today's times because his work predates motion pictures and cinema. Shh. I'll be using examples from other popular movies of our time and good storytelling elements that help carry out my narrative here. In case you haven't seen these movies by now, well, spoiler alert, I guess. I'll also be shouting out and quoting other YouTubers directly and some of their content. Star Wars belongs in the good versus evil category, and here the following key elements are dominant in these kinds of stories. The mentor, the hero or main protagonist, the main villain and evil mastermind, supporting characters on both good and evil sides, the overall plot, common in stories like this, and the message of the story, which varies from story to story. I'll use main examples from popular movies and show where these mentioned elements fit respectively. In the original trilogy, Obi-Wan and later Yoda are the mentors to Luke, who is the main hero of the series. Supporting characters are Han, Leia, Chewie, 3PO, and Lando for the good guys. The bad guy supporting characters are Grand Moff Tarkin, General Veers, Admiral Piet, Boba Fett, and Jabba the Hutt. The main villains, of course, are Darth Vader, and the evil mastermind behind it all is Emperor Palpatine. In the prequel trilogy, things are a little more complicated, but still Yoda is considered as the mentor to all the Jedi present at the time. Anakin Skywalker is the main focus of this trilogy and the main hero, and the supporting characters are Obi-Wan, yes, Obi-Wan because he has a more brotherly connection with him, but he is nonetheless Anakin's direct mentor and teacher. Padme, Jar Jar, our favorite droids, and the rest of the Jedi Order are in support mode. I'd have to say that the Separatist leaders and Jango Fett are the supporting bad guys in this trilogy. That's because Darth Maul, Count Dooku, and General Grievous are the poster boys for the dark side, having a direct role as the main villain. Palpatine is manipulating everyone from the shadows, posing as the kind Chancellor of the Republic. What a badass evil genius he is. In The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is the mentor and Frodo is the main hero. Supporting characters and the rest of the Fellowship are Merry, Pippin, Sam, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, to name a few. The side of evil has the mouth of Sauron off the top of my head, Grima, the Nazgul led by the Witch King, and of course Gollum. The main villain is none other than Saruman, and using him like a puppet is Sauron as the evil mastermind behind it all. In the Hobbit trilogy, Gandalf is still the mentor, but this time Bilbo Baggins is the one who is the main protagonist here. His support comes from Durin and the dwarves, as well as Legolas, Tauriel, and Bard, to name a few. Evil still has Golem on their side, and the villains are definitely Azog the Defiler and Smaug. But nonetheless, the evil mastermind who has yet to take form in this time period in The Hobbit is the Necromancer, or Sauron as we all know him best. Another trilogy that favors my example is Bryan Singer's X-Men trilogy, where Professor X acts as a mentor and guiding light to Wolverine, the main hero because of his enigmatic past. The supporting cast for the good guys is of course literally all the other mutants in Xavier's school. On Magneto's Brotherhood, again it's all the other mutants. The main villain and simultaneously the evil mastermind in this case is Magneto himself. So in the case of The Last Jedi, these elements are Rey as the main protagonist in this trilogy who is supposed to be mentored by a now older and much wiser Luke Skywalker, at least in theory. Poe, Finn, Leia, Rose, and Admiral Holdo are the supporting characters in the Resistance, while General Hux and Captain Phasma are only the First Order personnel I know the names of. Kylo Ren is the main villain, while Supreme Leader Snoke is the evil mastermind. But not for long. Now that I've explained how character elements work in a good versus evil story, I'll go into the story elements that are basically the mechanics that set the whole thing in motion. First movie. This is where it all begins, the adventure of the main protagonist. The audience is introduced into the universe the story takes place in and the characters within. The main protagonist is a star-eyed, naive, but kind-hearted person with a thirst for adventure. The mentor meets the main protagonist and often holds information about his or her heritage and past and explains to the audience and the main hero why they are important. Through brilliant expository dialogue, the mentor fills us in on the lore, the plot, and the way things roll generally in this universe. Classically, the mentor chooses the main hero because he or she sees the desired traits and potential the hero possesses in order to defeat evil. We're also introduced to other characters that will affect the hero's journey directly as companions or indirectly by taking a side quest with a common goal to save a day. Supporting characters may serve as comic reliefs, love interests, or tag along as the story progresses in other entries of the series. The most famous arc being the rogue, the selfish badass, who ends up helping the good guys like Han Solo, for example. Sometimes, on both sides, a character defects to the opposing side as their motivations and character arcs change throughout the story. The audience gets invested in these characters as they interact with one another. Evil sports their own roster of supporting characters, usually as a subservient to the villains, all with the goal to aid in total domination. In the first movie, we're introduced to the main villain and very little about the evil mastermind, who is usually reserved and alluded to for the final movie, and totally unleashed at full power at our heroes then. Our heroes enjoy their first victory as the side of evil often underestimates their chances and reorganize themselves to retaliate in the second film. The main hero begins to tap in their potential, and their character evolution begins. The mentor explains to us how and why the main hero possesses their power by using in-universe explanations that make sense to the audience. Supporting characters also begin to shape their arcs as their motivations becomes second movie. The second movie acts as a sequel to the first by maintaining continuity among its story and characters. We're reintroduced to all characters and get an idea of what they have been up to since the last time we saw them. By now, they have evolved slightly as characters, and they have gained experience from their encounters against their enemies for the first time. The second story explores the characters and their properties that define them, like strengths, weaknesses, passions, motivation, what drives them, what makes them likable, what makes them dislikable, and so on. Sometimes new characters make their first appearance, like a new mentor, a love interest, and even a new villain. By now the audience have grown significantly more attached to the characters and care for what they go through. This is where the stakes begin to rise. In the second movie, the story takes a darker turn as our heroes suffer a defeat, their biggest one, if I do say so myself, and brings them down to their most vulnerable point. Usually, this is where the mentor or another beloved and impactful character dies, or something important to the good guys is lost or destroyed. The main hero is forced to grow out of this situation and from their loss, someone important and close to them. The main hero is forced to pull through without the guidance and teachings of his mentor or her mentor, and this is what makes them vulnerable and susceptible to the main villain, as allegiances and breaking points are tested. This is something that the villain ultimately exploits. Most of the time, the main villain is tied to the side of good somehow by being associated in the past or knowing someone on that side. This is usually a character arc or a story arc of the fallen hero that got corrupted by evil. The villain traditionally tries to manipulate the main hero by twisting words in order to make the mentor and the rest of the good guys look weak so the hero can be persuaded to join his side. The main hero often gets information that leads them into self-doubt and in many cases doubt about their comrades. They're testing their allegiance and their faith in what they're doing and who they're doing it with. The main hero possesses the inner strength to refuse evil ultimately and escape the clutches of evil barely and in retreat. Evil ultimately triumphs. In the second story, the audience receives information with such a twist that changes everything in their mind and struggle to cope with it. So does the hero. This information is usually in the form of a truth regarding someone or something that the main protagonist or the other characters never knew about. A connection to their past, or maybe someone important to them, or generally a game-changing fact that forces them to take a different approach to the situation. All this makes the hero evolve their persona from a wide-eyed wanderer at the first installation of the movies into a more composed and wiser person towards the end of the trilogy. This is the key point in their character evolution arc, and if the previously mentioned events never took place, our hero wouldn't grow as a character. In turn, we the audience would never have been invested in his story or her story in the first place. The stakes now are at their highest. Both sides are closing in for the ultimate finale that will decide who comes on top and the fate of their universe that they are in. Third movie. This is the conclusion to our story and usually the most anticipated of the three for its unavoidable final battle between both sides who will go all out on each other. Character arcs and motivations are finally set and complete on both sides. Things have become much more clear for our characters, even good or bad. Protagonist's character evolution arc has been complete from evolving from a naive child to a powerful, wise, and composed leader that everyone looks up to, just as the mentor had hoped for one day. All eternal conflicts and self-doubt within the main hero have been resolved. Our heroes have learned from their mistakes, and every character have cemented their stance in the side they believe in. This is The final stretch, the home run, where the evil mastermind now has to join the fight and personally get his hands dirty or her hands dirty. The main hero has become such a threat to the evil mastermind up to this point, and this wasn't expected or anticipated at first, as the evil mastermind usually underestimates the good guys and their chances to win. The main villain in some cases has a redemption arc, but the evil mastermind is exclusively irredeemable and ultimately has a gruesome death in the final act. The good guys save the day and restore peace in the universe that they live in. That sums up the story of the main hero and basically the entire structure of a good versus evil story type, especially ones that are broken into trilogies. Of course, some stories differ in content, but the story and character elements are all pulled from the same archetype. In the next video, I'll be going over the character elements in detail and compare them to their equivalents in The Last Jedi. I will barely go over politics and tactics in this film, as I'm more interested in the literature that it's made of and why it failed. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to catch part 2 of my series. If you enjoyed my content, you can help me by liking, subscribing to my channel so I can come up with more videos like this in the future. May the Force be with you.